driving me off the highway. You're driving me off the highway. You knock my precious metal sideways on my drive to perfection. This time I'm gonna love you much better. I'm gonna love you much better. This time I'm gonna love you much better. I'm gonna love you much better.
Hello. Hello. And welcome to another design stream. Today I want to focus on a specific problem, whereas a lot of the previous design sessions have been kind of scattered or just doing like sweeps across the mechanics. For this one, I have exactly one thing I need to deal with. And that is the transcendence mechanics. And so I have some notes. And I have a bunch of lofty goals. And I have a bunch of problems. And so before the stream kicked off properly, I was chatting with some folks in the chat, and yeah, it reminded me of the importance of kind of outlining this whole thing. So I'm gonna add a little like design goal and then like problem statement, because I want to be fairly clear and structured about what's going on here. So the design goal is as follows. The PCs can transcend and become more powerful. This power comes at a cost, has limits, and is not the default state of the characters in play. While not transcended, PCs should expect So, transcendence is a cool payoff for other work. Something that brings an emotional climax to the missions, and has some engaging mechanics around it, both generally and per playbook. Transcendence changes per playset. Listed here would be the Starlit Kingdom default rules. So, this is what's up. So the PCs can just transcend and become more powerful. This power comes at a cost, has limits, and is not the default state of the characters in play. I can zoom this in for the benefit of you all. There we go. Hopefully this is a little bit more legible. In fact, I'm going to go all the way to 200%. Okay. So, they can transcend, become more powerful. Power comes at a cost, has limits, and is not the default state of the characters in play. While not transcended, the PCs are too weak to effectively fight the baddies, but can do stuff. Can do other non-fighty things. Transcendence is a cool payoff for other work, something that brings an emotional climax to the missions, and has some engaging mechanics around it, both generally and per playbook. Transcendence changes per playset, but today I'm just worried about making the default one, which is the one for the Starlit Kingdom, which is the one playset that we're working right now. Problem statements. So what are some problems that we have already with this, right? Like, what is the cost/requirements? Let's change this to questions. What is the cost/requirement? Does it have a duration? And if it does, there's like a whole bunch of other questions that follow that, like how long is that, and what do we use to measure that, and all that kind of stuff. And then we have issues like, so we have the cost, we have like how much power does it give? Access to additional abilities or better effect level. How do we balance these abilities versus standard ones? Right, because if there's like another set of abilities that are like transcendent abilities, which I have a few of for some of the playbooks. I think I have like 1 or 2, maybe 3 that I've settled on. And so I see someone mentioned clocks, and I think like clocks could be a way to solve duration / pool of power. Tax it as consequence. And spend for effects. Right, like that you kick off like a clock when you transcend, and then it is both a thing that the MC can attack and a pool that you spend from, which gives us then like another layer of stress or harm or whatever, right? Like it. This this is tempting as a solution. I see some problems with it as well. So to return to my point, so say we have standard abilities, we have transcendent abilities. Is it that like players start with one of each and unlock them, right? Like, because then we're talking about like where we allocate advancement, and we have to think about whether or not it is worth taking a transcendent ability that you can only access some of the time versus unlocking one that you'll have access to all of the time. There's that to consider, right? Like how we get the better stuff. I definitely think that effect level is a really sensible thing to tie into, given that we're a Blades hack, right? And like just like how in Blades in the Dark, demons exist on this like higher tier essentially, and the average PC might be too weak to fight them without having special kit or numbers or whatever, right? Like our way of addressing that in this game might involve some prep. It might involve like a project to get some cool stuff to help you fight the baddies, or like going and on a mission to find some like item of power, right? Because we have some mission options, right, to reclaim an object of power. So that might be something that we use when we strike at the heart of the darkness. And we have our whole system now of the darkness coming to get you, and you trying to find it first, and that whole tension. Cool, great. So it might be that we spend some of this, gamble a little bit on the pacing of this, or using the investigation somehow, spending investigation, something like that. that all might give us ways of circumventing the need to transcend, or give you like ways to power it. Maybe we always need to like find a thing to power it with, right? In this whole cost and requirement thing. My initial notion is that we spend links to do it, right? Spend links to do it. And then this is like on the most basic level what I have been doing with it, right? You spend link to transcend, you get access to the stuff, it lasts until end of mission or terminates as a consequence for failure. This was my just like bare bones way of running this, which I wasn't very happy with, because this, like, mechanistically, sure, right? You can spend some points that you've accumulated. It gives you some power, and that's great. But then it doesn't tap into any of this stuff, right? Of like a cool payoff, a feeling of, it mattering in some way. It doesn't accomplish that for us. So this is weak in terms of emotional impact, very flat mechanically, doesn't necessarily cue cool roleplay. Because, like, the most boring way I can think of doing this is that there are no special abilities associated with it. To transcend, you just, like, spend a thing. We could eliminate links entirely and just say you just push yourself to do it. Once you're in it, you stay in it, and it just gives you better effect level. Or that you have to continually push yourself to get better effect level. Shit like that. But that's, like, the most boring way I can think of doing it. It accomplishes some parts of this goal, right? Like, it most flatly is like, yes, they can transcend and become more powerful. It does it in an entirely uninteresting way. The cost is incredibly simple. But it accomplishes a bunch of this stuff. I would like to think of a fancier way to do it. My reticence around something involving clocks is that, and I mean, you see this sometimes in Blades and stuff, but I feel like it's mostly at a crew level, where you have clocks act as like, essentially they're like HP for like your crew vis-a-vis accomplishing the mission, or in the case of Blades, the score. And that, I think, works fine, because the crew doesn't have any other sort of, if we're at this like crew level, there is no other resource to poke at, so we invent one on the fly based on the fiction, and the circumstances of the character. So it might be that, like, based on the engagement roll, that that clock is going to start with a bunch of ticks already filled in, and when it fills in completely, it would be bad. Or maybe if it's something good, we might start with a little bit of progress on it based on our engagement roll, right? If our engagement roll goes well. But in this case, we're looking at it as like every time the clock ticks, you're spending something, right? Is what this would be. So it's essentially like a harm pool or a stress pool or whatever. And so while that is cool at the crew level, I don't like giving that to a player because they already have stress and harm. Right? Like, I don't like how this gives yet another HP pool to PCs. Seems cluttered. There are aspects of it that I like. I like the idea of a set pool of power that they get per transcend. I like that the MC can tax it, as well as having the player spend it. So, there are things I like about it, there are things I don't. And so, in the current implementation, all they need to do to get access to it is spend a downtime action hanging out with one of the other characters. That earns them some links, and then they can spend them later to get some other effects, including to transform. I don't want to gatekeep it too hard, because I would like for the players to be able to do it a bunch. You know, like, in my mind, it is not something... In my mind, it's something that the players could do every mission. And so, given that being the case, what I don't want to do is be like, this is something you may or may not have access to. What I would like for it to be is, this is a like brief period of awesomeness that you want to spend carefully. Because it is like a resource. I think the closest analog in Blades is probably gear and load. Now, this does not mean I want load in my game as such, because it doesn't make sense in this game, because we're not trying to like pretend to be regular people and do crimes. You know, like load matters in Blades because there's a bunch of fictional positioning stuff that is relevant, right? Like how recognizably a scoundrel you are if your load is bigger, right? That the cost we spend in order to access more gear is that we're more obvious, which matters a lot. We could do load as a but in the sense of, or rather, but the cost is paid up front with resources rather than with fictional complications as in Blades. Right? So in this model we would be saying, cool, so at the start of the mission, I'm investing whatever resource in getting a bigger set of like transcendent actions, essentially. So in this case, the downside to picking the heavy equivalent is that you can either afford it or not, right? So we're flipping the reason you get more stuff, and it's not you get more stuff by complicating your situation, but rather that you get more stuff by spending more stuff up front, and then that stuff can be used for other things. Honestly, people complicating their lives is more interesting than just spending points. Like, I think load is a really elegant, cool design for blades. Adapting it for this use seems a little strange. Right? Like, it's... Why would I spend beforehand? Why does that make sense within the game, right? I don't like upfront cost because it doesn't make any sense. Does not echo the fiction in any way. Right? Like, I can't think of anything in our source material that really like justifies that design. Right? And like, there isn't this idea of the gamble that exists in blades where you want to, right? Like, it might be worth having that extra load because load is a Swiss Army knife, right? It's this like, every box of load has huge potential later in the game and hedges you against a lot of problems. And there are also like different score types where it makes sense and others where it doesn't. The whole idea of load works brilliantly in blades, and I don't see it working here. I just don't think it actually works. Right? Like, in as much as it is it serves the most similar mechanical purpose to what we're trying to build here, I don't think an adaptation of load is actually going to function as I would like it to. The only real similarity here, ultimately, the only similarity is that it is a thing you spend to be awesome. All specific implementation is not suitable. So, yeah, like, it's important to have a thing that you spend to do awesome stuff, but the like specific implementation of load in blades is not suitable to this game. Great. So we've answered one question of like, would this work? I don't think it quite does. So we need to think of different ways of defining, right? But if we look at load and what the like coolness of load includes, as part of it is like, so things that I don't think apply. The idea of making a decision at the start that affects your outcome later down the line, right? Like, when you go to declare load, there is that tension between like, oh, I'm making this decision now about like how much stuff I'm bringing. Is that going to bite me later? This whole idea of like planning, and the like, I don't know. That's very much in line with like a game about criminals. It doesn't make sense for us here. The like Swiss Army knife thing of by spending load, you get to have the fictional positioning that you want. Right? I don't see Transcendence doing that either. And in the process of talking about these things, I've forgotten the one that I was going to draw a connection to. Well, I lost it. Oh well, the point went away. Yeah. So Claire has it, right? It's another resource, but presented in a way that's more interesting than another like track or clock, right? But it is still, you have this like limited number of times that you can do that during a mission, right? Where you're just like, oh, I do have that right thing. In a similar way to how you might accomplish it with a flashback, you might accomplish it with gear, right? There are like you have a bunch of different tools for addressing obstacles, right? So you might say, oh yeah, we've already dealt with this or planned for this obstacle, and then you do a flashback, you're spending stress. You might just go into it like head on and be like, yeah, this is a problem. I'm just going to try to like address it directly with action. In which case, essentially, you're gambling and maybe spending some stress on resisting consequences or whatever when things go wrong, because presumably your position won't be as good and the consequences will be worse. Right? Or you can spend gear, of which you have a limited number of uses per score. So in that sense, it's part of our, like, in Blades, load is part of our, like, arsenal. And so in Girl by Moonlight, we have eliminated a bunch of portions of our arsenal as players. Coming into a mission, I still have stress and harm. I can take those. I don't have gear at all, right? If we look at a character sheet, right? We don't have gear. There's no gear here. So I have my stress. I can take harm. Something I do have to spend is links. But their band of utility is pretty narrow. They essentially just let you mitigate bullshit that has already happened to you, or they let you transcend. So in a way, links are kind of our third option. And by spending them, we might make more use of options 1 and 2 of taking harm, suffering consequences, or spending stress to resist them, or to push ourselves to get better effect, etc., etc. And links provide this alternate pool. So maybe we need to think of the utility of links as being similar to the utility of load. Which is to say, like, can get you essentially potency when you need it, assuming that it aligns with your playbook. So one thing we haven't talked about is maybe differentiating Transcendence, which I've spelled wrong in every single playbook, which amuses me. Maybe we look at Transcendence both as having some general rules that we get here in the crew sheet, and then also having some specific stuff that we worry about in our character's playbook. So in a similar way to the fact that, like, there is gear that each playbook has access to, it might be that when Transcendent, each playbook gets a, like, field of influence, right? A realm in which they are stronger than the other playbooks. So, to come back to the notes, so this essentially is a completed conversation, as is this one, right? This one, I'm still open to the idea of clocks coming into it in some way. Each playbook might have some specific stuff that it does better, similar to how playbook specific load options give specific bands of power. Yes, as master, kind of like if you were to imagine everyone in the party were a cleric, but they were all clerics of different domains, right? They could channel divinity to get different stuff. So similarly, you know, our transcendent mode can be about doing different things. Essentially just like double down on playbook identity for transcendence. Whereas previously it was more general and driven mostly from crewbook. Right, so most of what I'm thinking about for transcendence doesn't involve really huge differentiation between playbooks. Like that everyone, once they transcend, kind of gets very similar stuff. But we could change that. We could have it be much more particular. Yeah, we could try to go with like a bidding system, um, like like how you do cred in the Sprawl, where you say at the start of a mission, you're just like, I'm staking this much, or I'm like committing this much of this resource now. But anything like that, which is, you know, is similar to like choosing your load level or whatever else, anything like that just doesn't really feel very like genre appropriate for me. There's never the tension with like magical girl stuff where it's like, oh, we're about to go on this, like, go do this thing, you know, like, what do I bring? The characters are always kind of fucking up and riding by the seat of their pants. And so any idea of, any notion of planning just feels really out of place. I'm down for the game to still have flashbacks and some other mechanics like that from Blades, but I don't want to have some of the kind of peripheral stuff that supports the idea of planning and that kind of thing. So this question is more about what do we get from transcending rather than like what it costs, right? So there's definitely like some unsolved stuff. So things I like thus far. I like the following. So each playbook has a set of bonuses. They get well transcended. As well as abilities to choose from. So there's like a thing you always get, and then some abilities to pick between. And I feel like there's room to have advancement choices that are impactful based on like maybe I'm just only worried about what happens when I'm transcended, and I get a bunch of cool moves for that. And that's fine. I feel like the other moves are still totally useful, even both while you're not transcended and while you are, so meh, but Right, and that these bonuses align with our playbook identity is very important. Crew-wide bonuses are also a thing. They support or they align with the overall crew ID. Crew-wide, and this is already true in the game right now, crew-wide transcendent style and fiction. Right, so we all do similar stuff. Like the crystal gems all have a gem that a weapon comes out of, and the Sailor Scouts all have like a transformation sequence. They're each associated with a different like planet and element, stuff like that. So yeah, King Oberon, yeah, like Power Rangers, right, where they activate their thing and they have the costume on suddenly. Yeah. All of that stuff, right, aligns with this idea of transcendence. And for the playset where everyone pilots robots, right, this is like when you get in your robots. And so, you know, that's like in the fiction that we're trying to emulate with this game, that's a super important part of it, right? And something that we get as like part of the climax of any given episode. And so like it's so core to the fiction we want to produce, so there has to be a robust set of rules around it that will push play towards making that stuff happen. And so these are all very small things that don't talk too much about specific mechanics, but just like, yeah, there's some stuff on the playbook. You get some more extra bonuses based on who you are. And there are bonuses based on the crew overall. What we still haven't solved is like this idea of like cost and resource associated with it. So currently you just spend a link to get it, and then you have it for the rest of the mission, or until someone hits you with a consequence that would drop you out of it. Which is basically the MC being like, spend another link. And then when you run out of links, you're fucked. We could do it that like, pushing links out of the question entirely, we could say that each player, when going into a mission, has a set pool available to them. That every mission you just get an amount of this to use. It's just another resource to spend, in which case we could put it as like a clock or a track on the sheet. So we could have a third resource. Tracked per character. And you just get it every mission and spend it for cool stuff. Option for MC to tax this. Links might buy you more of it, as they do with stress/harm. This is another design we could go with, right? You have just a number of points or whatever. This one is feeling more like load now, if we look at it this way, right? Of like, we just have another set of things to spend. Um, and so in this case, what we're looking at is how much does everyone get? Do we have a variable on this? Just like how with load there is a variable. And what the spread is on that. So in blades, it's what, like 3, 5, 7. Let me bring up blades here. Oh yeah, it's 3, 5, and 6 plus, apparently. So yeah, right, we could say like, we could set this amount with like a roll, or this could be based on if you have links or not, right? If you don't have any links, you're stuck with 3. If you have a certain number of links, you get 5 or more and you get 6. That feels like very much a win more kind of situation, where it's like, if you don't have any resources, then you get even less resources. Which is kind of bullshit. Doesn't feel good. So then what sets our resource quantity? Is it flat based on links, shared with crew? So we could also do it just that like the whole crew has access to a pool that is shared, and once they collectively spend it, no matter who spends it, like one person could spend it all, and then it's all gone. I like the idea of connecting this to, you know, because like the idea with links, right, is that it's your friendships are powering your magical shit. But there are other ways that we could deliver that feeling, one of which would be to have like a pool that the crew shares. And yeah, Kanye Abe, if you could like tweet a link to your portfolio at me, that'd be cool. And yeah, so this load is like per mission still. Because in terms of like logical units, the mission is a measurable finite thing that we have. It's the period between when we start the mission and when the mission ends, which is either they get the thing they want, or they decide to stop, or they all die. Easy. Can't say I don't have Instagram personally, but if you can, like, your Instagram can connect to my Twitter, whatever works. But that's probably the easiest, most accessible venue for me to receive stuff. And so, right, if there's this idea that like you just, once you transcend, you just get it for the rest of the mission, and then like why would you ever not transcend immediately at the start? So there has to be some kind of reason not to. There has to be some kind of tension. Like maybe there's a certain kind of retribution that is, available to be thrown at you once you transcend, like the stakes elevate. And I think this is a really important question. So how do we elevate the stakes while you're transcended, right? Because you are more powerful, but we would expect also for like antagonism to be commensurately powerful. Um, yeah, if we give it some kind of decay or like the issue with trying to have any kind of like time thing where it's like a duration, really what's what I should say, not a time thing, but a duration to an effect, is that we have very limited ability within the game to actually track time or duration of things. So we can do it lasts for the mission. We can do it lasts until your next roll, or a certain number of rolls, or a certain number of failed rolls, or a certain number of successful rolls, stuff like that. Those are the methods we have available to us in terms of setting a duration. Right, if we talk about opening a clock for it, we get back into this question, right, where we spend it, maybe the MC attacks it as well. And so once we open this clock, it is then subject to attack, so that would be a reason not to do it right away. It's also like, it could be that you get a set number of rolls at this greater effect level. In which case, and you don't have a choice about using it or not on any given roll. So you're just like, you're powered up for the next X things that you do. And so timing it is important. I kind of like that. I kind of like the idea of maybe once activated, you get X number of rolls, and then it ends. Can spend links to add more uses. This one feels like it accomplishes some of those ideas. Right, of like making it dramatic and impactful. It has a limited window. You can kind of only output so much at this power level before you piffle out. It gives us some nice tension. It makes it significant when it happens. And it also means it's not going to be like happening all the time, that kind of shit. So and then this gives us an additional resource that we tap into. Similarly to how load provides an option in Blades, this one functions in a more like dramatic, like knowing when the clutch moment is kind of way. Which, given the nature of the missions, I think is like pretty fair to throw this at players. We should be clear when we're actually going to get the stuff that we want. And in this case where it's like X number of rolls, here I just imagine it being a set number. The variance is by having more links that you can spend on buying more stuff out of it. And so that way we don't have to, any like roll for variance is cooked into the system prior, and then once you hit this, you kind of know roughly how much oomph you've got, right? How much gas you have in the tank. It's not like you go to transcend and then you roll shitty on a roll to set this duration that happens when you transcend, and then, like that would be really disappointing to be like, yeah, I get my cool big power moment, and and it sucks. I get like half of what I should. I don't like that idea. So So I like this. I think this delivers a lot of what we want. And that essentially means that this one is true. Okay, so we're going to build something around this. And this will be our current design. And so in this case, also this one is true here. We're doing that it's a flat amount. Plus, links can add to it. So it means we have to add something to our social links, use cases, which is like up here somewhere. Yeah. Because we have the recover stress and the shrug off harm. So now we have to add extend transcendence. And I will fill in the details of this down the line, but I just want to put a placeholder there so I know I don't forget it. And I like that this kind of gives us a load-like mechanic. Feels good. See you, Kira. Thanks for all your help. So I feel like I can eliminate a bunch of this stuff now. We've got a few things that we're keeping. I want to go into actually doing like a description of the rules for this thing. All right, we already know this is true. And yeah, this is really important, having this live on the character sheets, so it's really clear. I think it's really significant. Okay. So now we have to actually write the like rules procedure for this topic. I mean, I think if I delete this part of it, it says master, yeah, like this is actually a rough skeleton of what the kinds of stuff we want to write in here. So, okay, I can delete this whole ramble about load and this. That can go away. I'll keep my questions and my answers that I like down there. Cool. So let's kind of rewrite this previous paragraph. So in order to stand a chance against the various threats the characters face, they will need to transcend. Each PC can transcend once per mission, or can activate their transcendence Once permission. Once active, they receive all the associated bonuses and mechanics from the crew and playbook, from their crew and playbook. From the crew book and their playbook. Right, so like as long as it's active, you get that host of bonuses. NPCs gain access to their armor uses. Right, you can only use special armor before you're transcended. Once you're transcended, you actually get armor. What are some other things that we get? Right, so you're going to have your stats past here that you need to be transcended to get. So you get your stat bonuses. While transcended, PCs gain access to their armor uses. Bonus action ratings in the white circles or white pips. The track. Gain potency. I'll just say gain increased effect. Increased effect level. So basically the idea with the increased effect level is they go from being like standard effect to mundane things and limited or no effect to magical things to being great effect to mundane things and standard effect against magical things. I mean, yeah, I can just say beyond 2. Arm uses, action ratings, beyond 2. Or I could say the 3rd and 4th dots. 3rd and 4th dots for action ratings. And gain increased effect level. I think that's all the stuff they get, right? They get this. They get armor. They always have access to their special armor because it's a non-transcended thing, right? Like the Outsider, who has special armor against any consequences of their rival's actions and can spend special armor to act before their rival does. They can do that whenever. Doesn't matter. Don't need to be transcended. But getting regular armor, they need to actually transcend to use it. 3rd and 4th dots for action rate and increased effect level. We've also talked about they receive all associated bonuses and mechanics from the crew book and their playbook. Right. Armor uses, transcendent abilities, right? So this part is to say both the crew book and the playbook, and then here's just like a list of all this stuff. Because they do get their transcendent special abilities, which fall in here. A good example is that the time traveler gets reflexes as an option when they transcend, which is pretty cool. We'll have to find a home for the points that they get, but let's talk about how long transcendence lasts. So every action roll made advances the PC's transcendence clock by 1. Maderick, are you suggesting renaming armor to resilience just so that it's not like literal armor? Might do that. I think that might be a good idea. I mean, they could also have literal armor, but it's not like in Blades where they choose not to use it or whatever, right? Once they transcend, they have armor, which is like part of their transformation. Be it literal armor or otherwise, is kind of an open question. I don't know. I'm not 100% sold on changing its name. Not because I think you're wrong in that, like, resilience is totally a cool way to describe it. I just want to be really clear about, like, what it does. And I feel like, similar to action rating, like, armor is kind of a core, like, rules language thing from Blades. So, I don't know. I'm hesitant to change it for those reasons. So every action roll made while transcended advances the PC's transcendent clock by 1. Let's actually say so. Each PC a clock on in their playbook. Once the clock is full, the player cannot re-enter it for the remainder of the mission. See, and this right here is an aspect that I feel like the unlikely hero can do a lot of work around, which I think would be cool. Like extending other people's clocks and stuff like that. Sith Master with the whole critting on the Eclipse roll thing. Yeah, maybe we tie critting on the Eclipse roll to something like this. I really like the current effect on... Oh no, I'm thinking... No, I am thinking of a critting Eclipse. Because right now you do that whole like virtue thing. But it should totally like restore a pip on this clock as well. Let's go add that. Where is Eclipse? I guess it's after Transcendence. Eclipse, here we go. If crit is is rolled. Roll resistance of your choice and recover stress equal to the result. If Moe was rolled, blah, blah, blah. Race 1 spent segment of your transcendence clock. And roll resistance of your choice. Period. Recover stress equal to the result of the resist roll. And then we have this little triad of things, which I still like. And let's just move all of this down below this stuff. Crit is rolled, blah, 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 because it's the least likely outcome. So right now I'm imagining it as being like a 6 o'clock. You get 6 actions. Which would then mean that you could spend a link to recover up to half of your uses, potentially. I like the idea that as a consequence, some of those actions could be used up as well. Which obviously you can resist, but then, you know. That has its own costs. Important step. You got to describe it. You got to say how you transform. Very important. And that's the thing that you have to do to trigger it. So we've already answered this question. Now, we've also answered this one. We get more dice if we have playbook moves or crew moves about it. We get more effect. I haven't described the fictional stuff. Right, we have to do this whole like fictional thing, right? Of like, well transcended, you can do superhuman stuff, magical stuff. Which is to say that while you're not transcended, you can't. Which is something that I then am going to hammer on more in the next playtest, is being like, hey guys, you can't do cool shit unless you transcend. So it might be that you need to transcend in order to just like to make the jump, you know, over the ledge or whatever. that might otherwise be impossible. There we go. Yeah, Sysmaster's got it. The whole thing where you fall out of frame, like things are bad, and then you like re-emerge into the frame as a cool badass superhero. Yeah, that whole thing. Boom. So, I feel okay about this. So, HPC has a 6-segment transcendence clock. I mean, here's the thing. We'll just put the clock on. I don't want to have to say how many segments it is in the rules. All right, now that we're talking about this clock, where are we going to put it? What does it look like? All that stuff. Yes, as master, you can totally like trigger it at any time. So it can be like between trying to do a thing and then resisting the consequence of it. You can transcend, and like Starlight Kingdom, while transcendent, each character gets +1 die to all their resistance rolls. It would actually behoove you to do so. All right. Need to put this clock somewhere. Which means making a circle and doing all this crap. I want it to be somewhere that is prominent. I kind of want it to be up here, actually. I kind of want to move armor uses and all this shit down. Just need to find the layer. So many different text layers and stuff. Well, let's move this first and then let's move this other thing. I feel like that should be enough space. And then that we, let's see here, duplicate this. And this is going to be transcendence. We're going to put a clock in here. It's going to be a circle. Let's make it a clock that is this big. I need to make a layer for this clock to live on. Seems like a good size. Might be a little big. But at the same time, I want it to seem important. actually labeling shit this time. I'm just going to use some guides to try to correctly place this relative to all the other stuff. It's nice when things actually line up. Alright, so that's looking good. Top of it aligns with the top of the stress track. This is basically like a single pixel line. We actually have a tool for that. Oh, this does the whole row. Well, that's fine. Just do it like this. Probably needs to be a 2-pixel line. Is it centered? Looks pretty centered. And if we want to do a 6-segment clock, and maybe certain playbooks will have more segments. There we go, that's a 6 clock. Might actually want to rotate this like so. Does that look better? I think that actually looks better that way. Also, it wasn't quite centered, it would seem. Oh well, good enough. So we have our 6 pieces of pie there. Does everyone get the same clock? I feel like there's room for there to be variation, but very limited. Like how the fusion gets an extra armor use. We can maybe that's the fusion's whole thing, is that they get an extra transcendence bit, like they have an 8 clock instead of a 6, and get an extra armor use. Could give the unlikely hero a bigger clock as well. In fact, if anyone gets it, it's the unlikely hero, because they don't have access to it at the start of the game, which makes it funny. Okay, so let's see how this works when I try to then paste this. What the fuck did I just paste? Pasted text from Word. Alright. So it clearly did not work. So I think the only thing I have to do these one at a time. I have to grab the circle. Boom, there it is. And it doesn't preserve its placement. So there's going to be a whole tedious thing of migrating this clock around, which I'm not going to subject you all to. Let's get this one set correctly to begin with. So let's go over to the unlikely hero and just do theirs, because this is actually relevant. I think this wants to go here. What I'm probably going to do is like make one master character sheet at the end once I've actually settled on everything, and then repaste all the text content into it. But for now, we're doing this whole multi-sheet thing, and it's super annoying. So the unlikely hero is going to have an 8 clock available to them, but they have to unlock it during play. So I feel reasonable about that being the case. And we want our single row marquee tool. Here, we're going to do a new layer. This is the Transcendence clock. We're going to make our 2 pixel thick line. And then try our best to center it. I think this is centered now. And it's just a matter of doing some basic duplication, repetition. Oops. Boom. 8 clock. What a boss. So the unlikely hero gets 8 segments. Everyone else gets 6. And then yes, okay, Sith Master has the real spicy move. Actions made to directly protect another do not cost or do not advance your transcendence clock. You can have shit like that. That is so cool as a move, or as an ability, I guess. I should use my words correctly. But yeah, I think that's a super sick special ability, right? It extends the utility of your transcendence, but only in specific circumstances. I think that's really cool. So yeah, I think that's a really great type of move. I mean, you could write one of these for literally every playbook, even, and they would all be pretty solid. Right, because then it just drives them deeper into their archetype. They have to, if they want to stay super heroic, they have to play to type. It may be that this even is something that you automatically get per playbook and is not an option you need to select, but just that each one will have in their little transcendence description, it could just say right? This is a category of action that you can do. And so yeah, the idea with giving the unlikely hero an 8 count instead of everyone else having a 6 is that the unlikely hero doesn't access it at the start of the game. They have their move only mortal, they don't get to pick it. It just is always in effect. They cannot have special armor, cannot transcend, get an additional action during downtime, +1 when rolling social link. When only you can save one of your friends from fatal harm or severe consequence, and you succeed, you lose this move and gain Hero's Destiny. And Hero's Destiny is you have embraced your heroic destiny, you gain potency when fighting manifestations of darkness, and +1 die when rolling Eclipse. So they go through a period of vulnerability, and then when they do a cool thing, they have to actually succeed at it. They lose this move and gain Hero's Destiny. And they lose these benefits of this move as well. So The idea here is that you can play the game as the unlikely hero and like never transcend, and that can be your whole jam. But if you ever, but in order to pay off that awkward beginning stage, I feel like there needs to be some kind of long term benefit. So the hero's destiny move is pretty rad. Um, so you're like good at directly fighting shit once you can transcend, and then are also more likely to get cool effects when rolling Eclipse, um, and that you get to be heroic longer because your transcendence clock is bigger. Um, and then we have shit like this, right? Spend links on your sheet to allow another character to transcend or activate a transcend move. Okay, so we just need to reword this now that we've changed how transcendence works. Um, we got to redefine this move. So we'll put it in the old caution tape of the square brackets. Yeah, King Oberon. We're just stopping by this playbook because it has a lot of interactions with Transcendence. Um, in a roundabout kind of way. All right, so to come back to it, here is our whole. And there's one detail. Boom. I need to reword some things. Describe your character's transformation. Right, so we describe this transition from one to the other. Once it's active, we get all of the bonuses and mechanics available to us from our crew book and our playbook. You gain access to your armor uses, your transcendent special abilities, the third and fourth dots for action ratings, and increased effect level, just across the board. While transcended, the characters can perform superhuman or magical feats that might otherwise be impossible. Each PC has a transcendence clock in their playbook. Every action roll made while transcended advances the PC's transcendence clock by 1. Once the clock is full, the player drops out of transcendence and cannot re-enter it for the remainder of the mission. Seems complete. I think we're good. This is still to be done, but I will just add. We basically already have a reminder for that in one of the other playbooks, so I think that'll be okay. So now we need to go back to this extend transcendence move for links. So previous to this, we could use links to recover stress or shrug off harm. Bloop, bloop. I'm noticing an edge case with regards to the shrug off harm idea. So with this second version, if we roll our remaining links and can ignore harm of level 1, 2, or up to 3, depending on how our roll goes, what happens if we only have level 3 harm that we're trying to ignore and we don't roll good enough? Did we spend the link? Does it go away? Do we get our link refunded? So for this reason, I think it is easier to do it this way. So the last thing that we can do is spend links to extend our transcendence. I think this is going to be very similar to this. We're gonna do it like this. Roll 1 die per remaining link with that player. Use standard array from project roles 1, 2, 3. So 1 to 3, 1. 4, 5 is 2. 6 gets you a 3. And on a crit, doesn't make sense to do 5 on a crit. That's like way too huge. On a crit, something cool should happen. I don't know what it would be. Yeah, I think the Transcendence Clock, I didn't write about this. I need to write this all out. Okay, boom. The clock empties at the end is when the we'll just say resets. And then we'll add it to our end of mission procedure, right? Because we have this, entanglements, and reset their transcendence clocks. Right, it's there. Now it's part of the procedure. Haha. And then let's look at Eclipse as well, because I think there's going to be some stuff that matters for Eclipse. Boop, boop, boop. Where am I? Or no, in darkness. Here we go. So while you're in darkness, playing your darkness prompt, instead of accumulating stress, you erase it from your sheet. When your stress reaches 0, your character succumbs completely to darkness. You choose to either have your character die, such as be retired from the action. Make a new character, they join the group. While in darkness, you do not clear stress at the end of the mission. Your role obligation is... You roll obligation as normal. You still roll. You do not clear stress. Or transcendence. Or transcendence clock at the end of the mission. So if you have some left on your clock, how I haven't made rules for leaving darkness. Let's add a section for that. That's another big gap. So when you escape the darkness, erase all stress. Erase any remaining stress. And clear your when you escape the darkness, if you are not in downtime or free play, erase any remaining stress and clear your transcendence clock. So if we use this setup, I'm just trying to imagine all of the possible use cases here, right? And so if I was in darkness, survived my obligation roll, and now we're in downtime, someone helps me escape the darkness in downtime, I pop on out of it, I clear all of my stress. This actually puts me in a better position than the typical circumstances of one of the other characters. So that's kind of interesting. It costs someone a downtime action to get to this point. So, maybe that's fine. I think ultimately that all is fine. Because it's a very high stakes thing. So when you do get out of it, it shouldn't be too punishing on the way out as well. And yeah, you clear your transcendence clock. If you escape darkness while on a mission, right, we need to, because you could satisfy one of those clauses while on a mission. Do we get a reset for doing it while on a mission as well? I think you roll a resistance of your choice and recover stress based on the result. Recover stress equal to the result is what I should say. So there's a little bit of randomness. You don't necessarily get all your stress back. So if someone falls and then in the same mission recovers, depending on how close to the wire they're at, it might be... I don't like the idea of having people fish for this kind of playstyle, though, right? Because then they're just going to be doing all these extra things that have nothing to do with the mission during the mission. Yeah, but the MC can just be like, yeah, okay, so all of these clocks that will end the mission against you guys advance while you're doing that shit. I don't know. I'm like, it's so complicated to actually pull it off that I'm not sure how much of a problem it is. And like, if they're taking the time during, like, let's imagine that it's in my playtest of this past week. It's the, they're in the like the big like sewer aquifer dome thing, and it's like towards the end when one of them has already fallen, and there's that big wormy thing and it's fighting them, right? Imagine them trying to orchestrate a recovery from darkness during all of that shit that's happening. And this is where I feel like it's not really a problem, because say, oops, right, we have Gear Cavalier's character, Libra, who was in darkness, right? And so all the people you have sworn to protect are unworthy of that protection. You belong to the front, leading the fight. Wherever foes exist, you seek them out and confront them directly right now. Right? Cool. He played into that. That all was good. You can only escape the darkness when someone shows you how you are vulnerable and loves you despite your own weakness. How are they going to do that in the middle of the mission? Right? Like, while he's in the maw of the giant worm trying to, like, hack at it with his axe, someone takes the time to be like, yo, homie, you are vulnerable, but I still love you. And, like, put some dice behind it? Sure. If they want to take that chance, like, yeah, right? Like, there are going to be consequences, clocks are going to advance. I'll be like, yeah, while you're trying to save your friend, the other guy, what's his name? Kevin or Bill or whatever the guy's name was. Anyways, that guy is like plummeting to his death. Who are you gonna help, right? Shit like that. Like it's not hard as the MC to just like make this consequential, which is all it needs to be, and I'm totally fine with that. The only thing that's uncertain for me is whether or not we let them erase stress. I think definitely nothing happens with their transcendent clock. Yeah, right. Like if they manage to pull that off while doing the action, that's super cool too. I'm all for it. And as long as like, so here's what we need to imagine, right? We've decided that we're okay with the fictional aspect of this, right? Where someone falls, like gets all edgelord, stuff is happening, we recover them from that. We then have to ask ourselves, really, fundamentally, if we're cool with all of that, what are the mechanics then going to be? The minimal impact we could do is just say, like, cool, you're out of darkness and nothing else happens. So, like, your stress level remains the same, everything else remains the same. That would be the lowest impact way to do it. I feel like there should be a certain amount of, like, stress relief, because otherwise we could have someone who's at 9 stress, they fall to darkness, they immediately get rescued by their teammate, or at least they do before they take any more stress, which would cause them to erase on their sheet. And then we recover them, and they just sit at 9 stress again, and then they have to roll Eclipse, like, immediately. Right? There's the potential for them just immediately going back into Eclipse and then into darkness again. And that is the kind of thing that I'm not into having, is just like constantly switching on and off. Again, I think it would actually be really difficult to get that constant switching on and off going on. So, I think we need a special, we need an exceptional case here, which is that we either reset to a flat amount. So say like you return to action with 5 stress marked on your sheet, right? Like you're just at half. We don't have any equivalent of trauma, and I'm all for people continuing to fight because they were still fighting while they were in darkness. They're still contributing. They're just in this like high stakes mode where the character can get wiped. The escape clauses are awkward enough that I think it's really hard for people to pull them off while actually completing the missions. And there's lots of room for the MC to just be like, I don't think that doesn't satisfy me, right? Because ultimately they get to be arbitrators of that stuff. And if we're at the table and this is like the second time in a mission that you're trying to show me that everything's okay, like there's going to need to be this kind of like escalation of the stakes and of the things that we do to help someone recover, right? And yes, as Matt says, there's like there's a whole mission type about cleansing, like redeeming people. But that is not where the like in darkness thing comes. That's if they've like fully bottomed out and their character has like died. You might recover them by going on a mission. And similarly to how people being lost to their vice in Blades is a way of shoehorning in new characters into the crew. The kind of equivalent for my game is people bottoming out while in darkness and becoming baddies, and then later you go and like redeem them and bring them back. But in the meantime, you're playing another character. I mean, we could get into the whole like putting escaping darkness more than like limiting once per mission or per session or whatever. That all feels like too much. Really, all I'm looking for here is like, what is an appropriate amount of stress to return this PC to the game with, or well, to return them to normal with. My gut says something in the realm of 5. We could just say you come back with 5 stress. Right? It's just a flat amount. If we assume that, when people are being all edgelord and erasing all that kind of stuff, they're still effectively at 9 stress and we have recovered 4. That seems pretty good, right? Because that's half, right? 4.5 would be half, but 5 is half. Half rounding up because we want to keep things tense and not give them too much free stuff. I can even see it being at 6. They have 3 stress remaining, which means they can push themselves once and then they have 1 left. So you know what? I'm going to say you return with 6. If you escape darkness while on a mission, set your stress to 6. Boom. Easy. I think we just want it to be a consistent number that is like not overly generous. So they have a little bit of stress to work with because they're still super fucked up. But it's enough that they won't be useless or won't immediately fall back into Eclipse. Boom. I'm fine with it. I think this is fine. We'll see how it plays out as well, right? This kind of like numbers game stuff, kind of got to playtest to really get a sense of it. And I like that it's just boom, it's this number. It's real easy. Creates very little ambiguity. I say when the crew completes the mission, but like, I guess this has to happen during missions. But we'll say completes a mission, just because, whatever. Saying once per mission means only while you're on a mission. You can't activate it in downtime or any of that kind of bullshit. Alright. Extend Transcendence. Roll 1 die per remaining link with that player. Use standard array for project rolls. 1 to 3 gets you 1. 4 to 5 gets you 2. 6 gets you 3. What does a crit get you? Crit 3 and a thing. It doesn't make sense for it to remove stress because we already have another thing that's about removing stress. It doesn't make sense for it to remove harm because we already have a thing that's about removing harm. 3 and a teammate recovers 1. Not just any teammate. 3 and the linked player gets 1. It's based on the result. Use standard array from project roles, blah, blah, blah. This one, the linked player gets 1. I like that. So if your links that you gave me benefit me, you get a payback. I could even change all of these to work that way. Yeah, I think that's how these should all work. On a crit, the linked player recovers 1 stress as well. That's well with 3 Ls. That's not how that works. This one, in its current mode, there is no roll. I like this crit result still. Just erase a harm tag. I don't actually like this result. On a crit, the linked player advances their recovery clock by 1. So small benefit, but it could be good. And yeah, on your last link, you'd roll 0 die. Because your friendship's all used up. Oh, King Oberon, it's totally cool. Ask away. You're allowed to ask questions and not know things. So yes, as master, we use harm recovery kind of like in Blades. I'm not doing the whole like opening your recovery clock thing. Yeah, because it doesn't keep getting reset in my game. It stays open, ongoing. Or at least that's the current plan, because we have a bunch of stuff that interacts with recovery during play. All right, well, I think we figured out Transcendence, which was the goal of this stream. I think it worked. It only took 2 hours. And we've solved all the problems in theory. It has a finite duration. It has a clear cost. It has that nice spicy impact. It is both precious and useful. Right, you have like a limited amount, and it's very important, but it's also really good to use it. And it has an interaction with social links, which was another really important design goal. We've gated a bunch of mechanics behind it, but not in a way that feels totally bullshit. Yeah, I'm into it. Yeah, this is like a thing now. It's mechanics, and it fills space, similar amounts of space to what we have taken out of Blades so far, right? Which is a really important thing to keep in your mind. I feel when hacking is like this game that you love is, is of whatever size. And you have to decide whether or not you want to kind of like keep your scope the same as the original. In my case, I've elected to pare it down some, but I don't want to pare it down too much. I don't want to pull too much stuff out. Right? Like you can look at Burning Wheel to Mouse Guard, right? Where Mouse Guard is like, or Torchbearer, both would be similar. You are narrowing the scope of your game and focusing in on like specific other stuff. Right? Like how much do you keep? How much do you take away? And anytime you're removing a bit, you have to ask yourself, like, is this important space that I need something in, or is this like non-load bearing, And I feel like, God, I just made a pun. Whoops. I feel like load is a load bearing mechanic. It is a structurally significant mechanic. Because it gives us another axis of like a resource that exists on a different axis from the other ones that we have. And one that gives us a bunch of like fictional positioning tools that help hammer home our playbook's identity. And so having Transcendence brings a lot of that back in. We have some playbook specific reinforcement. We have a cool toolkit that gets us, better effect levels and better fictional positioning that we might require for doing the kinds of stuff we want to do. And just like load, it's like a precious and contained thing. So, thank you all for joining me and, engaging in this discussion. It's like so immensely helpful to have you all here. So, I really appreciate it. And, like follow me on Twitter, at Commuting Crow. Follow me here on Twitch, or keep an eye on my YouTube if you're a YouTube viewer. And if you're interested in playtesting, I'm now pretty much at the point where this game has all of its bits. I'm going to be fleshing out the remaining playbook stuff for Transcendence moves now that we've changed how Transcendence works. So basically what I need to add still, the last piece before I send this out, is something like this for each character. And then maybe like 1 or 2 abilities for them to have while Transcendent. But essentially some kind of like categorical benefit that you get while Transcendent that aligns with the playbook's identity. So right, for the Guardian, actions made to directly protect another do not advance your Transcendence clock. And I gotta put Transcendent clocks on all the character sheets and do some other like busy work stuff. So that all is going to happen off screen. I think the next I mean, I guess I'm going to stream on Friday. Stream some more game design stuff, but I'm not sure what that's going to look like. It might be that I'm workshopping transcendent moves and stuff like that. It will probably just be more special abilities for playbooks, honestly. But once I'm done my little bit of busy work, I think I'm in a good position to actually put the playtest out finally. You can also tune in a week from today for the second part of the playtest that I'm doing on Distracted Elf's channel. And that is twitch.tv/distractedelf. And so once that wraps up, I'm probably going to move on to having a regularly occurring playtest thing. It might be in that same Sunday morning time slot that I was doing previously. We'll see. But I want to start getting something going. So there will be more content relating to Girl by Moonlight coming out on a regular basis in the future. More like actual play content. So keep an eye on all my internets for that stuff. And you can also support me on Patreon. My Patreon is linked to my Twitter. Money that goes into my Patreon feeds and houses me and stuff, so that's cool. If you want me to still be alive, supporting my Patreon is a good way to ensure that continues. So you can do that. Or you can come by my Twitch channel and give me bits now, because I'm an affiliated streamer. But anyways, I'll see y'all, I guess, on Friday when I'll stream some more mystery content. We'll see. Bye for now.